Welcome to the WorldWire Update YT. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon for more updates and thrilling short scenes. The year 2025 began with a chill in the air, not just from the winter weather, but from a sense of unease that swept across North America. As the calendar turned, business leaders, workers, and politicians alike braced themselves for what many feared would be a turbulent year for trade. The familiar tension in North American trade was back, but this time it felt more intense, more personal. The highways and railways that connected the continent buzzed with uncertainty, as companies wondered what the future would hold. In March, President Donald Trump made a dramatic announcement, a sweeping 25% tariff on all goods imported from Canada. The message was clear: America was taking a hard line. This was a massive economic move, aimed at protecting American jobs from what he called unfair Canadian competition. The administration argued that Canadian imports were hurting American industries, especially manufacturing and agriculture. The news sent shockwaves through financial markets and political circles. Investors scrambled to assess the impact, while economists warned of rising prices and potential job losses on both sides of the border. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau responded swiftly, calling the tariffs a very dumb thing to do. He stood before the press, vowing that Canada would not back down and promising strong retaliation. Canada's government quickly prepared a list of retaliatory tariffs, targeting key American sectors like steel, aluminum, and even agricultural products. The message was unmistakable: Canada would defend its interests. The stage was set for a trade war between two close allies, whose economies had long been intertwined. Decades of cooperation now seemed at risk. This was more than just numbers and tariffs, it felt personal. Families with cross-border ties, small businesses, and entire communities braced for the fallout. President Trump had threatened tariffs before, but this time the stakes were higher, the rhetoric was sharper, and the consequences more immediate. He delayed the tariffs for a month, using the threat as a negotiation tactic. Both sides watched the clock, hoping for a breakthrough but preparing for the worst. For Canadians, it felt like an attack on their sovereignty and their way of life. The uncertainty weighed heavily on families and businesses alike. The once friendly relationship between the two countries was now strained, with trust eroding on both sides of the border. Businesses reliant on cross-border trade scrambled to prepare for the unknown. Some rushed to move goods before tariffs hit, while others began to rethink their entire business models. Would the tariffs really happen? Which products would be affected? The questions seemed endless, and answers were in short supply. Companies began planning for the worst-case scenario, holding emergency meetings and consulting trade experts to map out their next moves. This meant finding new suppliers, rerouting shipments, and rethinking supply chains that had taken years to build. The once seamless process of moving goods across the border was now fraught with risk, delays, and mounting costs. The first shot had been fired in this economic battle, and everyone, governments, businesses, and ordinary people, waited anxiously for the next move. The uncertainty loomed large over both nations, casting a shadow that would not easily lift. As federal governments traded threats and rhetoric escalated on both sides of the border, tensions between the U.S. and Canada reached a new high. Canadian provinces, unwilling to sit idly by, began formulating their own responses to the growing crisis, determined to protect their interests and send a message to Washington. British Columbia Premier David Eby stepped into the spotlight, unveiling a bold plan that targeted a unique American vulnerability, one that few outside the region ever considered. Eby proposed imposing heavy tolls on American commercial trucks using BCES highways as a lifeline to reach Alaska, a move that would hit U.S. businesses where it hurt most, their bottom line. This route, the legendary Alaska Highway, is absolutely vital, serving as the only reliable land connection between Alaska and the rest of the United States, threading through hundreds of miles of Canadian wilderness. Eby didn't mince words, calling Trump's tariff threat an act of economic war and describing his toll plan as a necessary counterattack to defend Canadian jobs and industries. In response, the BC government introduced the Economic Stabilization Tariff Response Act, a sweeping piece of legislation designed to give the province new powers in the face of U.S. pressure. The act authorized the province to levy tolls on any vehicles traveling through BC to or from Alaska, targeting the very artery that keeps Alaska supplied. These tolls would only be activated if U.S. tariffs actually took effect, making it a powerful bargaining chip in the ongoing standoff. The move sent shockwaves through Washington as American officials realized the strategic pressure now being exerted on their supply lines. The Alaska Highway, long a symbol of free passage and international cooperation, now faced the prospect of new toll stations and checkpoints. For the U.S., this posed a serious logistical and economic problem, threatening to disrupt the flow of goods to and from Alaska. Every day, trucks carry time-sensitive, high-value cargo, fresh produce, medical supplies, and essential goods, along this route, making any delay or added cost a major concern. By threatening to choke off this critical supply chain, BC put real pressure on the U.S. to reconsider its tariff plans, leveraging geography for political power. EB framed the toll plan not just as economic retaliation, but as a proud defense of Canadian sovereignty and the province's right to stand up for its people. In a bold challenge, the province dared the U.S. to cross its new financial wall on the road to Alaska, raising the stakes in a high-stakes international standoff. Alaska's leaders saw BC's toll threat as an attack on their economy. Senator Dan Sullivan warned Canada, "Don't mess with Alaska." Alaska had a powerful counter: the cruise ship industry. Sullivan threatened to waive the Passenger Vessel Services Act. This law requires foreign-flagged cruise ships to stop in a foreign port. Waiving it would let ships sail directly from Washington to Alaska, bypassing BC. This would devastate BC's tourism, reliant on cruise passengers. A similar waiver saved Alaska's cruise season during COVID-19. Sullivan threatened to make it permanent, affecting millions of cruise passengers. The threat created a new front in the trade dispute. BC threatened Alaska's supply chain. Alaska threatened BC's tourism. The fight expanded beyond tariffs to critical services and infrastructure. British Columbia wasn't alone in its response to Trump's tariff threat. Provinces across Canada launched retaliatory measures, showing national unity. Ontario announced a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to the U.S. This would increase energy costs for millions of Americans. Yukon halted purchases of American products for liquor stores and restricted U.S. businesses from government contracts. Public sentiment in Yukon was strong, with calls for tougher measures. BC stopped selling alcohol from Republican-led states and directed purchases away from American products. These actions were symbolic acts of defiance, sending a message of resistance. The united front among provinces showed widespread opposition to the tariffs. Canada created a multi-front economic war, making it hard for the U.S. to isolate a single entity. The trade dispute impacted ordinary people, especially truck drivers on the Alaska Highway. For them, the highway is their workplace, not a political tool. The threat of tolls created uncertainty and anxiety, potentially wiping out profits. The Alaska Trucking Association warned of increased costs for consumers. Prices of essentials like food and medical supplies would rise, straining family budgets. In BC, the tourism industry feared losing cruise ship business. Thousands of jobs depended on the summer cruise season. The conflict showed the deep economic interconnection between the two nations. The trade war had a human face, filled with worry and uncertainty. The practical realities of the trade war began to set in. For Alaskans, the potential blockage of their land route threatened daily survival. Fresh produce and vital supplies depended on overland transport. Tolls meant higher prices and potential shortages. The Alaska Highway, a logistical puzzle, faced new toll systems. In BC, the cruise industry faced a dark shadow over the summer season. Businesses had invested heavily, now at risk. The situation highlighted the fragility of supply and tourism chains. The trade war taught a harsh lesson. Political decisions had tangible consequences. The invisible lines on a map became very real, very quickly. As September 2025 unfolds, the U.S. and Canada stand at a crossroads, facing one of the most challenging moments in their shared history. The choices made now will shape the future of both nations for years to come. The tariff war, once just a policy dispute, has spiraled into regional threats and retaliations, disrupting the flow of goods and straining long-standing economic ties. The border, once a symbol of cooperation and friendship, has become a line of conflict, marked by uncertainty and tension on both sides. The future is uncertain. While some tariffs have been delayed, the threat of further escalation still looms large, casting a shadow over businesses and families who depend on cross-border trade. The situation has become a high-stakes standoff, with no easy resolution in sight. Every decision now carries significant consequences for millions of people. Diplomacy must prevail over confrontation if there is to be any hope of de-escalating the conflict and restoring trust between the two countries. A solution will require compromise, understanding, and a willingness from all sides to put aside differences for the greater good. The alternative is continued escalation, which could lead to even higher prices, lost jobs, and lasting damage to communities on both sides of the border. This dispute has revealed deep fissures in the U.S. Canada relationship, exposing vulnerabilities that many never expected to see. Now the fate of the trade war, and the future of North American cooperation, rests in the hands of key decision-makers, whose choices will echo for generations. The coming weeks will determine whether this historic partnership can be repaired, or if the conflict will leave a lasting scar on both nations, changing the course of their relationship forever.